if you're working out or exercising to try to decrease the chance for clotting, is the goal to just get your heart rate up, or are we lifting weights, or what is the exercise of choice?
Oh, heart rate up is the simplest thing to do, to measure, because you want improved circulation. So you're increasing circulation. If your heart rate's up, that's increased circulation. So yeah, that's the best way to look at it.
Here's a note from Jan. My best friend beat cancer and was getting out of the hospital from recovering from pneumonia and stood up to leave, and a blood clot from his leg broke loose and killed him. They are serious. Yeah,
they are serious. This is not a minor problem.
Yes, and I'm sorry to hear that. It's terrible. Okay. All right. I'm going to go into some more questions. Some of these will be relating to clotting and some aren't, but let's see. Those of you who may be new, we talk a lot about the diabetes solution kit, and I usually have mine sitting right here, but you know what? It's in the other room. We're actually going through the diabetes solution kit right now, updating a few things. There's actually a group of us who are doing phase 2 of the kit, and just so that we can make sure we're understanding all of the things that you guys are doing. I can't believe I didn't bring that back in here. If you look at bartonwebinar.com, you'll find a link to the diabetes solution kit, and that's what we talk about on this webinar. And so one of the questions that someone had just asked is, can we eat ham on the diabetes solution kit? And so what do you think, Dr. Saunders?
Generally, yeah, but you have to consider sugar-cured ham does have a lot of sugar in it. And ham's okay, but look at it as this is another food I'm adding in to see if I tolerate it well, if it doesn't raise blood sugar or anything like that.
Hello. You know what? We, my kids have been on Christmas break. They actually had 2 weeks off. And then we got, I think, between 12 to 18 inches of snow here. So they actually haven't even gone back to school yet. So they were supposed to go back on Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, still home. Our snowblower broke and my husband's out of town. So this has just been super fun. And then Dr. Saunders showed me his beautiful view and 60 degrees, green and lovely. So I do appreciate the seasons. Right now, I'm kind of sick of the snow, not going to lie. And check out those surfboards in the background for Dr. Saunders too. How cool is that?
Yeah. My daughter actually went surfing 2 days ago.
Where are you today?
I am in Santa Ynez.
Santa Ynez. Awesome. Yeah. And I'm coming to you from South Dakota. We just really got hammered with a blizzard. I don't know if I've ever seen this much snow here. So it's been very interesting. Let us know what the weather is by you guys and where you're tuning in from. We're excited to have you today. We're going to talk about, of course, type 2, because we do that each week, right? But we're also going to talk about blood clots. This is something that has come up quite a bit in some of our discussions. And so we're going to kind of dive a little deep into this. So if you have questions, feel free to post those in the Q&A. I just realized I didn't enable the chat here. Q&A is the best place for me to manage that. So if you can do that there. If you are on Facebook, go ahead and post in the comments. Again, we're excited you're here. We do this every single week. If you're new, welcome. You can find more information about these webinars in a link to our YouTube channel as well, where we have all of these recorded at bartonwebinar.com. I think we are a few episodes behind on that. We're working on editing those, but there's so much good information, 170 plus webinars we've done. And so there are a few things that Dr. Saunders has shared in all of those episodes. So be sure to check that out. Let's see. MC says 80 degrees in deep South Texas. Lovely. Oh, that does sound lovely.
Nice.
Yay. So good. All right. Everything should be up and running. Okay. Yeah. Start with your questions in there. That is awesome. Dr. Saunders, would you mind giving us a disclaimer? Tell us a little bit about yourself again, and then let's dig into blood clots.
Okay. So first of all, the information that we give here is for general information for a lot of different people. And it's important that you look to see if that information applies to you specifically. It might, but it might not. So it just depends on your situation. So so take the information that you get and apply it properly, and then nobody gets hurt. So as far as me, I must excuse myself because the reason I'm home today in Santa Ynez and not at work is because I have a cough. So today we're talking about clots. And this is a really important subject. This is not a minor problem. This isn't just for people that have pulmonary embolus. This is for everyone. And it's really important for you because the damage that's done to blood vessels is clots, but you have to clot. So you have this, you're always walking this really, really fine line between too much clotting and not enough clotting. If you have too much clotting, then the blood is going to pool in your veins and just clot off, and then you can't have circulation if your blood's clotting up in your veins. And if you have not enough clotting, then you're going to leak blood all over the place, and you're going to leak into your brain. You're going to get your aneurysm, or not aneurysm. You're going to bleed into your brain. You're going to die. You know, that's what rat poison is. If you look at what does rat poison do? All it is a blood thinner. That's all it is. It's not poison. It doesn't cause dysfunction of the nervous system or anything. It's just a blood thinner. So, and everybody breaks blood vessels all the time, even the little rats. So little mice and rats, they're running around and they break a blood vessel, and they're on this too far on the line of not enough clotting. So they don't clot, and they keep bleeding and bleeding. And if that ruptures in their brain, they die. If it ruptures somewhere else, then the internal bleeding, they could die too from a lot of internal bleeding. So that's really what they die of, rat poison, is internal bleeding because they don't have enough clotting. Well, so you need clotting. But then on the other side, if you have too much clotting, then the clots form in your veins because the veins are really slow. It's like a vein. A vein is a pipe that has valves in it. There's no heart in your feet to pump your blood back up, right? Because it's got to get up there somehow. But there's nothing to push it up. So all it is as you're moving around, then the blood in the veins moves a little bit, and there's valves that keep it from going back down. So it goes up a little bit and pop back down, go up a little bit, pop up, go up a little bit, and there's valves all the way up to keep it moving up all the time. So it's really slow and sluggish. So if you were clotting too fast, then it would just sit there and clot, and then what ends up happening later on is those clots kind of break off. They get pressure behind them, and they break off, and they move up into where? Well, they go up through the venous system, through the heart, and up into the lungs. And the lungs start off with these big arteries, the pulmonary arteries, right? And then it branches off into littler, and so you have these little arteries, and then the clot comes in and then plugs up somewhere. And if they're little tiny ones, it's not going to make a difference. But when they're big ones, they call them saddle embolus. When they can plug up the big pulmonary arteries, then you got to think about that. There's no circulation going to go anywhere, so you're dead. And it's a low pressure system, so it's not going to push through or anything. So clotting is super important, and having that, just walking that fine line all the time. So I want everybody to be really scared, and every day you have to be thinking, am I walking that fine line between too much clotting and not enough clotting? Am I going to get an aneurysm? No, I'm kidding. So what you need to know is that your body has enough, and it's an incredible system. There are dozens of different factors that are involved in whether you're going to even make a clot or not. and so you can start on one, and then another factor can come along and say, no, we don't want to clot there. and you can have platelets plug something up, and then some of the factors go in. Yeah, let's make a clot, and then another fibrinogen comes on and goes, no, we don't want a clot there, and then they don't make a clot. Or they do, or the cascade keeps going, and they end up forming a clot there. This is important for another reason. It's heart disease or vascular disease. So heart disease is not about cholesterol. Cholesterol is the side effect. It's the end result. It's the symptom that you see. But beyond the symptom, the way that started is clots. So here's how the system works. It's a beautiful system. You have these arteries, and inside your arteries is a lining. And this lining in your arteries is just a super smooth, soft lining. It's kind of like a gel. And the blood just flows right through it, because in a pipe, if you just take a pipe like a copper pipe or a iron pipe, and you run water through it, then the water flows at what's called laminar flow. The outside of the pipe has resistance to the flow, and the inside of the pipe doesn't. So you have super fast flow through the middle, but the outside is slow flow on the outside because of that resistance. Blood vessels offer no resistance. It's just like the blood just goes right through it. So if you have a really good glycokalyx, it's called, the lining of your arteries, everything just flows beautifully, and it won't clot because it just keeps flowing, and there's no resistance on the outside to cause the eddies or anything like that, so it's going to slow down the flow or allow clotting to happen. It's when there's damage to the lining of the arteries that's the problem. So what causes damage? And when things don't flow well. So for example, I have a woman who has in her carotid artery, she has the artery comes up and it makes this weird turn and then comes up. And that weird turn, it kind of curves around, but it's a really sharp turn. And right in that area, because of that turn, the flowing of the blood, it wears away, or it does damage to that glycokalyx on there. And so she's got these problems in her arteries because of the flow problems. Sometimes the heart has issues like that too. And there are other arteries in the body that can do that. Other things are inflammation, any kind of inflammation. It doesn't matter what it is. We had all the cardiologists scratching their head over why gum disease causes heart disease. Why do people who have gum disease get heart disease? Inflammation. And the inflammation causes damage in the arteries because of that glycokalyx is not restoring itself very quickly. So if you have any issues with blood flow, with heart disease, with clotting, or things like that, what do you do about it? That's the big question. What can you do? Okay, so number one, repair the glycokalyx. People who get clots in the arteries of their heart are not going to get a bunch of cholesterol deposits if they repair that really quickly and restore the glycokalyx and restore the flow. Then they're not going to get coronary artery disease. So how do you do that? Well, the only thing that has ever been shown to reverse cardiovascular disease is a very high fiber, low fat diet. And that's one of the things that's really important, is having all of that fiber. But it's not the fiber by itself. There are a lot of things that are a part of that the glycokalyx is made of. The lining of your arteries is made of, it's called glyco because it comes from sugars. The word glyco means sugar. So there's certain types of sugars, but they're sugar with proteins attached to them, and there are some fats attached to them. But the types of sugars that we need are not the types that you normally find in processed foods, for example. These are sugars like fructose and glucosamine, and what they do is they're not soluble per se. They just allow, it's like a gel, like I said, it kind of gels. When you make a gel, like out of starch, if you've ever made that, and that's the kind of thing it is. So you have to get these special kinds of sugars, and those are found in a lot of different foods. And so a variety of different fruits and vegetables is really where you get that kind of thing. So the fiber, yes, that's important and that's part of it, but the sugars are also an important part of it. They decrease the inflammation. And that's the other thing that you need to do is decrease inflammation. If you have inflammation, you're more likely to get clots. So find out where the inflammation's coming from. If it's gum disease, you got to take care of that. If it's arthritis, you got to take care of that. If it's intestinal inflammation, then you got to take care of that. Taking care of the inflammation in your body is really important for preventing damage to the glycokalyx and preventing clots in your body. And then that prevents heart disease, vascular disease, and all those other problems. So clotting is a big thing. It's not a small thing. You know, cardiovascular disease is the #1 cause of death. And there's a really good book recently written by a doctor in Scotland called The Clot-Thickens. And I recommend that book to anybody who has heart disease or who wants to know about why heart disease happens. It's a really well-written book and thoroughly researched.
Very interesting. Someone had asked, so first of all, how would you know that you have a clot?
You don't until there's a problem. You know, it's kind of one of those things. You know you got a clot when it's too late. When you have a clot in your brain and you have a stroke, yeah, okay, that's how you figure it out. When you have a clot in your leg, you may not know it at all. You wouldn't even know a thing. There's no pain, well, sometimes there's inflammation, like pain. But when you get swelling of your ankles, for example, that often means you have clots in your vein, or sometimes there's other reasons for that. But it sometimes means you have clots. And a lot of people, I had a guy who had clots in one of his legs, and it was throwing emboli, they're called. The clots were moving up his veins into his lungs for years, literally, and nobody knew it and nobody knew what was going on until it got really bad, until he couldn't breathe and was having congestive heart failure. So yeah, it's often really hard to know until it gets really bad. But if you have phlebitis, which is inflammation of the veins, your legs get painful and hot. That's an indicator too.
Is there a way to dissolve clots?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so what do you do if you have clots? So I already talked about getting rid of inflammation and getting on a good diet. And part of that diet is you're getting bioflavonoids, which are really important for restoring the glycokalyx too. So all those bioflavonoids and all that, that's the dietary part. But there's actually things that you can use to dissolve clots. One of them is called lumbrokinase. Lumbro refers to a worm, and it's an enzyme extracted from worms that actually dissolves clots. It's a clot dissolver, and it does work. And there's another one called nattokinase. Nattokinase is taken from a soy natto, if you've ever heard of natto, which is a soy curd fermented soy, and that there's an enzyme that the bacteria produce that ferment the soy, called nattokinase, and you can buy that too. The amount you take, you have to. It depends on the formulation, but most of them are around 200 milligrams, or it's like 2,000. I don't know what the units is, but for the enzyme units, and you take that 3 times a day if you want to dissolve clots.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How does Roy is asking? How does exercise affect clotting? Does it prevent it or reduce them?
Yes, exercise is a great thing to do to prevent or reduce clots, because it increases the blood flow and decreases the amount of clotting that you have in your body.
I was in some discussions this past weekend. My husband is currently traveling, and we were talking about clotting when flying. Do you have recommendations or advice about that?
Oh, that's a great question. In an 8-hour plus flight, so people sitting on a plane for 8 hours increases the clotting dramatically. So where, most people in 10 hours, you're going to rarely, 1 in 1,000 is going to have clots if they're sitting at home. But sitting in an airplane, 1 out of 10 people in an 8-hour or more flight have evidence of clotting. And what they did is they would draw blood and look at the D dimer, which is a product of clotting. So they would measure the levels and go, 10% of people on long-term flights do get clots. It's not an unusual thing. You think 10% might not be a lot, but for clotting, that's a lot. And that's not just people who have like clotting problems or congestive heart failure or thrombophilia or some disease or something. No, these are like normal people getting clots. And I've had people who've had to cut short their European vacations because they fly 10 hours over to Europe and they get clots, and then they've got to go on blood thinners, and they can't get around easily. And yeah, it's a problem. So prevention, before you get on a flight, you can take aspirin. That's helpful. And then you can use nattokinase or lumbrokinase. That would be a great place to start. But when you're in a long-term flight, every couple of hours, get up, walk up and down the aisle, and sit back down. You don't have to be up for a long time. Just get up, walk up and down the aisle. So, because the way the seats are made in an airplane, they're a little higher than usual. You may not notice that. And so they put extra pressure on behind your knee. And so your blood flow through your legs is a little more sluggish in an airplane than it would be if you were sitting in a chair at home. Chairs at home are about 14 inches, and then the chairs in an airplane are about 15 or 16 inches. And that allows you to put things underneath, right? Because they want to be able to fit things underneath. And they can also fit people in easier if they raise the seats a little bit, because if you're sitting down low, like in a car, you stretch your feet way out. Whereas if you sit up high, then your feet go straight down, and then they can put the seats closer together. So for all those reasons, yes, flying. I went off on a tangent.
No, this is good. In fact, we have a doctor at church. This is where we were having this discussion, and he also had recommended compression socks as well.
Oh yeah, you can use compression socks. That works. By the way, if you get clots, just use compression socks for a while, and those are those really tight hose that you can't hardly get them on, that put a lot of pressure on, and then walk around with those. Otherwise, those valves, if you get clots in your veins, the valves kind of quit working. But if you put compression hose, you can save them sometimes. Hopefully.
Okay. Let's see. Olive said, I just had the Watchman procedure 45 days ago to control my clotting. Not sure what that is.
That's a Watchman. That's Greenfield filter. The Watchman is the heart. the heart thing. That's for atrial fibrillation. You know, that's another issue, is the atrial fibrillation is something that allows, because the heart is not beating regularly, it's beating irregularly. So the blood kind of pools in the atrium and allows clots to form, which can then go through the other side of the heart up into the brain and into the body. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, so many good questions. I'm going to see if I can start getting through some of these here. This was an interesting note I saw come through. Let's see. Oh, if you're working out or exercising to try to decrease the chance for clotting, is the goal to just get your heart rate up, or are we lifting weights, or what is the exercise of choice?
Oh, heart rate up is the simplest thing to do, to measure, because you want improved circulation. So you're increasing circulation. If your heart rate's up, that's increased circulation. So yeah, that's the best way to look at it.
Here's a note from Jan. My best friend beat cancer and was getting out of the hospital from recovering from pneumonia and stood up to leave, and a blood clot from his leg broke loose and killed him. They are serious. Yeah, they are serious. This is not a minor problem. Yes, and I'm sorry to hear that. It's terrible. Okay. All right. I'm going to go into some more questions. Some of these will be relating to clotting and some aren't, but let's see. Those of you who may be new, we talk a lot about the diabetes solution kit, and I usually have mine sitting right here, but you know what? It's in the other room. We're actually going through the diabetes solution kit right now, updating a few things. There's actually a group of us who are doing phase 2 of the kit. And just so that we can make sure we're understanding all of the things that you guys are doing. I can't believe I didn't bring that back in here. If you look at bartonwebinar.com, you'll find a link to the diabetes solution kit. And that's what we talk about on this webinar. And so one of the questions that someone had just asked is, can we eat ham on the diabetes solution kit? And so what do you think, Dr. Saunders?
Generally, yeah, but you know, you have to consider sugar cured ham does have a lot of sugar in it. And ham's okay, but look at it as this is another food I'm adding in to see if I tolerate it well, if it doesn't raise blood sugar or anything like that.
This is a really good question. Denise said, where in the course does it say to eat proteins with fats and carbs alone? And actually, this is a discussion that we had on the webinar last week. Dr. Saunders is kind of digging into some of this, I think. And so I don't believe that's mentioned in this course.
No, Denise, we didn't put that in. That's a food combining thing that I'm working on right now. And there is a book called The Zone Diet, and that's the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine uses the Zone Diet as their kind of basis for diets, because if you can separate the carbs from fats, especially, you can save a lot of problems, like type 2 diabetes, for example.
Very interesting. Okay, as you were talking about inflammation, one of the things that came to my mind was turmeric. And I'm curious about your thoughts on inflammation and turmeric. And also, I'll just throw this out there too. Here is our own product. This is turmeric BP. And I know a lot of people use this for various things, but if you're interested in learning more about that, you can find information at bartonwebinar.com.
Turmeric is wonderful. It is great anti-inflammatory. As more research is done, it's like amazing about how many things it can help by lowering inflammation. The only thing that I have with it, the recommendation I might make for it is, if you're using turmeric, use it on a somewhat intermittent basis. So all the research that I've seen with other herbs in this, I haven't seen anything with turmeric, but with wormwood and ashwagandha and other herbs, it's been shown that if you take it every single day, its effectiveness decreases. So, and it seems like, 5 days on, 2 days off if you're taking a pill. If you're using turmeric in food, like having curry or something like that. You know, you're not going to eat curry every single day. Well, you might, but that's, you know, you don't have to. If you take it on an intermittent basis, it will continue to work better.
It kind of goes along with what we talked about a little bit last week, eating in for different seasons. It's almost like your body wants to have a variety of things. And I've had this discussion with Dr. Saunders as someone who has had some gut health issues. It's good to have your body exposed to different bacterias. And I think about that a lot, even with our supplements. Dr. Saunders has told you about how, now don't go do this with your supplements right now, but how you'd be better off sometimes putting them in a big jar, mixing them all up and taking, you know, 3 a day or something like that. And I think you typically do that too, where you're not taking the same thing every day. You're taking your vitamin D maybe once a week or however you're doing it. But
yeah,
I just know that has worked well for you. So that's good. Okay. Question from Denise. I have type 2 diabetes and I'm 65 years old. I just finished 7 weeks on prednisone after being diagnosed with Crohn's. Denise, I also have Crohn's. It caused me to have blood sugar readings over 550. Now that I'm off of steroids, my blood sugar is still very high. 230 to 288 are common days. I'm taking Lantus 10 units every evening and short-term insulin before meals if my blood sugar is over 200. I don't feel safe just stopping taking the insulin. Can your diet still work for me? I started your diet on New Year's Day. Awesome. Before meals, blood sugar was 268 and 2 hours after was 253.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot of information. Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
So, first of all, the prednisone, which is a cortisone, is like cortisol. It's a stress hormone or adrenal hormone. That suppresses the immune system. So with Crohn's disease, when your immune system is flaring up and causing all this inflammation in the intestines, the prednisone will suppress that inflammation. But at the same time, it causes insulin resistance, and that's why your blood sugar is 500 and completely uncontrollable. You could inject a ton of insulin, and it's not going to get any better because you still have the insulin resistance from the prednisone. So yeah, so you did everything right. That's all good. Now, after you're off prednisone and your blood sugar is still, you know, in the 200s and you're still using insulin, at this point now that you're off prednisone, it would be a really good idea to have several tests done to test your adrenal glands, because you want to know how your DHEA to cortisol ratio is, and you want to know your morning cortisol. Are you tend to be on the high side or the low side? Is there any stress hormones? And if you can get an adrenal stress index, which shows, they usually do saliva. You spit into a tube like 5 or 7 times throughout the day, so that you can actually look at your circadian rhythm to see how your adrenal glands are functioning. So that would be one test. The second test would be test your pancreas. So look at, you would use C-peptide and insulin. So insulin, because you want to know if you're, how much insulin is required to get your blood sugar down. So, you know, if you're seeing levels of insulin of, 100, that's really high, even if your pancreas isn't working. So you want both of those. And then the C-peptide tells you how much your pancreas is making, how much insulin your pancreas is making. And so if your C-peptide level is over 1, then you probably are making enough insulin that you could start weaning off the insulin. But you'd have to work with your endocrinologist on that. So the first way to start on what you're looking to do is, the answer is number 1, yes, the diet is really good for you, even if you're going to require insulin, because it's going to get your insulin resistance down. So that's number 1. Number 2, do the extra testing, the adrenal tests and the pancreas tests, so that you can know where you are, so that you'll know what to do, whether you even need insulin or not. Because if your C-peptide level is 5, then you certainly don't need insulin. So yeah, look at that first.
Okay. Question from Anonymous. Is it okay to have a measure of alcohol each day, as I find it lowers my sugar levels? I'm a type 1. Vodka is my choice with water.
Okay, that is really interesting. Okay. Well, the general rule is don't drink alcohol. Alcohol is a sugar. It damages the liver, and even small amounts cause liver damage to cells in the liver, causes inflammation. So the rule is don't. The daily vodka. I just wonder, as I was listening to you, Leslie, read that. I was wondering if maybe the vodka is a stress reliever, and that stress has the cortisol, and the cortisol makes you resistant to insulin. So you take the vodka and you're like, and then you don't make extra cortisol, and then you're less resistant to insulin, and it seems to improve your insulin function and blood sugars. So I don't know. It's you got to do what works for you. Yeah. The rule is no, but there are exceptions. How's that?
Okay, let's see. Is erythritol safe?
Yes, erythritol is a sugar alcohol, and it's fine if you eat a lot of it. It's going to cause you to get diarrhea because it's not absorbed in your intestines. But consider this, we've talked about this a lot. The taste of sweet causes you to make extra insulin, which causes insulin resistance. So your question was, is it safe? Yes. It's not a good idea, though, if you have type 2.
All right. Let's see. Someone is asking, what is a pancreatic detox?
The pancreas is it's an organ. It's an amazing organ that makes all of your enzymes, your digestive enzymes. It also makes a whole bunch of sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, to neutralize all the acid from your stomach. And so the pancreas is working really hard all the time that you're eating. So a pancreas detox is fasting. Whenever we had people who had a toxic pancreas, they had inflamed pancreas, they had pancreatitis, or big cysts or whatever, we always put them on a detox. And that means you go in the hospital, they give you IV fluids, and they feed you through your veins, and you just eat nothing, your NPO, nothing, not even water by mouth. That's a pancreatic detox.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. This is a really good question. In fact, this is something that I wanted to chat with Dr. Saunders about, because we are reworking some of our recipes and information in the solution kit right now. Someone is asking about cream cheese. There is a part in the book where we talk about cream cheese. It says to try to stay away from it. And yet we have 3 recipes that have cream cheese. And so that is something that we realize. Let's talk about cream cheese. Let's see what Dr. Saunders' thoughts are about it, because this is something that we have to revise anyway. So,
okay.
Here's what I will say. The non-doctor opinion is that cream cheese really does make a lot of recipes taste so good. It is low carb. It's also dairy. So what is the issue with cream cheese?
It causes insulin resistance. That's the only issue with it. Okay. So by itself, it isn't bad. It doesn't raise your blood sugar unless you are eating carbs. So a lot of the problems are like, if you look at cream cheese frosting, right? It's cream cheese and sugar. That's like the worst thing you could possibly eat, because the fat's going to make you insulin resistant. And then you're going to add in all that sugar at the same time. So, just shoot everything up. So if you're eating any kind of cream cheese with carbs, it's really not a good idea. Yeah, when committees put things together, you get things that are not quite right. like some people have one idea, like, yeah, cream cheese is good, it's low carb. And on the other hand, then the cream cheese does cause insulin resistance.
Okay.
So
we're probably taking it out of our solution kit, it sounds like. Is that wise?
yeah, well, that would be in phase 1, that would be wise. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think we are going to, that's one of the changes I think that we are making. So we're going to revise some of those recipes. So, okay. Good question. This is good. That was on my list of something to talk to Dr. Saunders about anyway. Let's see. Denise says, is this like a keto diet? Are we supposed to eat high fat?
Okay. The answer to that is yes and no. Yes is like a keto diet. And actually it is supposed to be a keto diet, but we're not focusing on the ketones. We're not focusing on checking your urine or blood to see if you have ketones. Although you could do that. It's really just getting the carbs down to a level that it's less than your body needs every day. So you're not eating enough carbs for you to function on. And yes, that's what a keto diet is. But that's also a detox from excess carbs. So all that glycogen that's overloading all your cells is going to be used up because you're not eating enough. So we call it a carb detox. But yes, it is a keto diet. But then the second part of your question is, should we be eating a lot of fat? No, that's the other side of it. Because remember, type 2 is too much. Too much of what? Too much fat, too much carbs, too much protein. It's too much of the only 3 things you need to avoid are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So the idea is that you should not be eating a lot of fat, that it's a very low carb diet. And we have all the free foods on there, this list of free foods. You can have all the broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and lettuce and celery you want. And those are the things that you could eat all you want of, and then limit the protein and fat, and then really limit the carbohydrates.
In the diabetes solution kit, in phase 1, you're eating 20 net grams of carbs per day. So it's very low. I saw somebody mentioned a bagel with cream cheese in the morning. And if you're following the diabetes solution kit, you may want to check that or rethink that a little bit. A bagel, I think, is going to put you over the edge for your daily count for carbs.
Certainly.
So something to think about. With that being said, I think someone posted a recipe for an almond flour type of bread. Is that okay to eat with my meals? And I think, again, you gotta look at your carb counts, because that's the goal right now. So while it might be a healthier alternative to regular bread, you still got to stay within the carb limits, which is the number of carbs minus the fiber. And there's a reason that you do that.
Yeah, the reason we did that is because we just had to make it easy, so you can just focus on one thing. You didn't have to worry about all these other things. Just focus on one thing, getting your 20 grams of carbohydrates a day and not going over that. And doing less than that. And just one focus, make it easy.
One thing that I would recommend is kind of, if you're doing 20 grams of carbs, kind of plan out your days, allow yourself, if you're going to have 2 or 3 meals. Someone had asked a question, can I just do 2 meals? So it seems like I'm getting to eat more. Yes, you totally can. You can do 1 meal. Dr. Saunders talks about fasting in quite a few of our webinars. If you want to fast and just eat 1 big meal, go ahead. You can do whatever you want. Make this work for you. You get to choose your foods. You get to choose when you eat. So make it yours. Make foods that you enjoy that stay within that carb limit. So find out what you love and what's filling for you. Even in doing some of this, again, I'm noticing I really like to have a few staple items on hand, whether it's the cucumbers or pickles. I love pickles. And if I really need something, a pickle works great for me. Sounds so simple. Or even, roll-ups that you can do with pickles and deli meat. Not all deli meat is created equal, but something to think about. There's all sorts of options, and maybe you like tuna. Tuna's an option. I don't know what your thing is, but figure out your things, have those in your pantry or your refrigerator so that it's easy. If you get into a bind, you always have it. Okay. There's my little preachy moment, I guess. All right. Let me jump back in here. Oh, the Garcias are on. Hi, guys. Question from Velo about high blood pressure. I've been prescribed the following for my high blood pressure: 40 milligrams of olmesartan, medoxamil, 25 milligrams, hydrochlorothiazide, and 6.25 milligrams of cerevedilol twice a day.
Yeah.
My high blood pressure did improve. The highs are 190 over 96 down to 154 over 85. But the doc added, I got to say it again. The doc added the cerevedilol plus a baby aspirin at 81 milligrams. The doctor still didn't give me what the root cause could be or tests to perform. So what can I do to combat this naturally, of course?
Okay. There are 300 plus known reasons why blood pressure goes up. And one of the reasons that when you go to a doctor and you have high blood pressure, they say, oh, it's essential hypertension, which means there's no cause of it. It just happens. That's not true. It's not real. It's just that there's so many possible causes. It's really hard to find out what it is. But finding out what it is essential, because if you don't know what's causing it, then you can't deal with the reason. And if you don't deal with the reason, then the problems of hypertension are going to remain. So let me give you an example. All of the studies that are done on strokes and blood pressure, as the blood pressure goes up, the stroke risk goes up. More blood pressure, more stroke, more blood pressure, more stroke. So now what happens if you give a blood pressure medication to drop the blood pressure down? Lower the blood pressure, the stroke risk does not move one bit, not a tiny bit. Normal blood pressure, high stroke risk on blood pressure medication. So it's not about the blood pressure. The blood pressure is just a symptom. And so you have to find out the reason for the high blood pressure. If you have adrenal problems, get your adrenal glands fixed. If you have kidney problems, get your kidneys fixed. If you have brain problems, get your brain fixed. If you have hormone imbalances, get those fixed. Everything, electrolyte problems, you got to get those fixed. Whatever the issue is, that's the underlying cause of the high blood pressure, has to be fixed, because the blood pressure medication does not decrease your risk significantly.
Wow. Okay.
Going out on a limb for that one.
Let's see. Butch, how are you? Okay, so Butch, I think, is considering fasting, or he does fast. When fasting, if you're using bone broth, do you consider that as part of your meal, or can you have that during the fast?
Oh, well, okay. Let's define words. Fasting means empty stomach, period. Okay, so if you put anything in your stomach, I don't care if it's water, you are not fasting. So that's how that goes. Now, What about a bone broth fast? Well, that's a modified fast. There's a whole bunch of modified fasts: water fast, juice fast, bone broth fast, whatever. Those are modifications. Well, it's not reasonable to have an empty stomach continuously for 2 weeks or a month. That's not going to work very well for most people. So the modifications are necessary. So if you're going to do bone broth, and I've had people do 30-day bone broth fasts, drinking 2 16-ounce cups of bone broth twice a day, or 1 cup twice a day, 2 cups a day, and it's as if they were fasting. They get most of the benefits from fasting. Now, research shows that a true fast, where your stomach is empty for the full 3 days, and you don't even drink water, is better for you. You get, if you measure all of the metabolic, what do they call them? The chemicals that that are measured to see how well you're doing. If you measure them in the rats that are absolutely fasting, where they're literally not eating anything, versus those that are drinking water, the ones that don't drink water actually do better. So how do you modify that? Well, fewer times a day is better. So if you're drinking 1 16-ounce broth a day is better than twice a day, is better than 3 times a day, is better than 4 times a day. And then you have these people that say they're fasting and they're sipping water all day long, and their stomach doesn't get empty. They're not making ghrelin, and they're not getting the benefits of the fast that they could if they actually had an empty stomach. So you get the greatest benefit from having an empty stomach. So however that works out for you, it's not a simple thing, because it's going to be different for different people. When I do a 3-day fast, since I've practiced a lot, when I do 3 days, I have no food, no water for 3 days. If I do more than 3 days, I will drink water. Or if I do 2 weeks, then I'll drink broth, and I'll have broth twice a day. And you got to figure the broth is going to empty out of your stomach pretty quickly. Then you're with an empty stomach, and then you're making ghrelin, and then you're going to go back into anabolic mode. So however that looks, I know I didn't give like a clear, this is the way to always do it. There is no clear always way to do it. Just defining the terms and going, okay, if I'm fasting, that means my stomach's empty.
We're kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to mention this quick. If you go to bartonwebinar.com, the link to the YouTube channel is there. There's a question about, having trouble with neuropathy. We have an entire webinar recently dedicated to that. Same with fasting, and then same with the 610 reset, where Dr. Saunders goes more in depth into ghrelin, human growth hormone, all of those things, why you should stop eating by 6 and in bed by 10. Really good information there. So I would recommend going to the YouTube channel to find some more about that. Quick question here from someone. As a type 1 diabetic, I find every single supplement increases my sugars or keeps my readings elevated for longer than if I take none at all. Is this common for type 1 diabetics?
Yeah, well, most of the supplements and drugs and all of that that are meant for type 2 cause you to make more insulin, and if it doesn't cause you to make more insulin, then you could make more glucagon. And if they stimulate the pancreas to make more glucagon, then it's going to make your blood sugar go up, because your pancreas is going to work better, and the blood sugar is dropping low, and the pancreas is going to go, oh no, it's dropping low, let's make more sugar. So then you get gluconeogenesis. So I'm thinking off the cuff here in what could happen. But yeah, it's reasonable. If you have type 1, the supplements probably aren't going to be great. Even things like synochroma, the purpose for synochroma is to make you more sensitive to the insulin you have. But if you're pretty insulin sensitive, then you won't notice a big difference.
Someone asked if Barton sells glucose monitors. We do not. I'm sorry. Cindy said that my dad got clots and he never found out the cause. Could they be hereditary?
People do inherit. That's called thrombophilia. Thrombo means clot. Philia means loving. So he's a clot lover. So some people, like I have the factor 5 thrombophilia, and there are other factors that people have, genetic abnormalities that cause clotting. So yes, there are other reasons for that, genetic factors, but you still have to deal with those clots, and that's really important to deal with clots.
All right. Okay, we're gonna have to wrap up. Glenn says, I'm going back to stage 1 in the reversal diet after some really undisciplined eating from Thanksgiving through New Year's. I'm gonna bet that you're not the only one. What supplement should definitely support the diet on stage 1? And once reached the weight goal, then which supplement should definitely be used?
Okay, I love that. And I'm so glad everybody heard that, because That's what everybody's supposed to do. That's why we made this phase 1, 2, 3, is so that you're on phase 2, you're on phase 3, and you go, oh my gosh, I've really gone off the deep end. What can I do? It's easy. Go back to phase 1. That's the answer. And that's always going to be the answer. Just go back to phase 1. And it's really, really simple. So I love that. Okay, so then your question as far as supplements goes, the supplements aren't the deal. The deal is your 20-gram carbohydrate diet. That's it. That's what's going to fix the problem.
That's good. Dr. Saunders is not a supplement pusher. Sometimes we want him to be. I want him to be sometimes. Just give me something to make it go away. No, he wants you to get to the root of the problem and take care of it. So we so appreciate that about him, even though it makes me crazy sometimes. All right. So I think that's going to be it for today, guys. We're already over our time. Come back next week. This was so good. Such good information. I hope you guys are excited about this new year in 2023. We have the leadership team right now meeting, discussing how to best help you guys and what our webinars are going to look like for the year, etc. So we're excited about this year. We've had a lot of good stuff happen, lots of conversations with so many of you about how the Diabetes Solution Kit is changing your life. And we're so thankful for that. So come back again, tell a friend. And Dr. Saunders, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining again.
Next week.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye-bye.